Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to episode 8 of COVID Cast JA. To all our viewers who have been with us from episode 1, welcome again and thank you for spending another afternoon with us. For those persons who are joining for the first time, this is a production from the private sector organization of Jamaica, where we're seeking to help our small and medium enterprises through this COVID pandemic. We've been here, this is 8 episodes in. We've talked about recommendations to the SMEs coming right out of COVID. We've talked about the various financial institutions relief packages. We've talked about the government care packages, human resource issues, pivoting the business. We've had some great discussion, and please, all of our videos are on our Facebook page, so please take your time and go back through. Now, we've been talking about all the various business issues. Last week, we talked about productivity at home, and this week, we're going to be talking security alert, time to protect yourself and your business from crime. Because one thing we know for sure is that COVID is not going to cut out crime. Yes, we do have curfews, so it cuts out the time that the criminals can be on the road. But we have so many other criminal areas to worry about. There is physical security, there is cyber security. We're using our cards, our credit cards and debit cards much more. We're doing so much on the internet. People are wearing masks. Are you even able to recognize the persons who are coming towards you? And with all of the stress of COVID, it is very easy for us to get complacent with our security. And where businesses have been closed, we have to be looking at the physical security of your premises. So today we're going to be joined by a group of professionals in various areas of security. We have Jason Robinson, who is a security and investigations professional, who is going to be talking to us about physical security. We have Stuart Hilton, who is Manager Advisory Services at Simtai Consulting Limited, and he is going to be talking to us about that very important issue of cyber security. We're also joined by Dane Nicholson, Manager Special Investigation Unit at the National Commercial Bank, and he is going to be talking to us about our cards, or credit cards, or debit cards, and putting ourselves in a position to prevent fraud. So we're going to have a lively 1 hour. Please send in your comments and your questions, and if you are not on our email mailing list, please email us at sme@psoj.org. We want to be able to send our weekly memo to you to keep you up to date on the various issues that are being discussed. So I think we have Jason here with us, Jason Robinson, security and investigations professional, and Jason is going to be talking to us about some of the security gaps that many small businesses have, and where businesses have been forced to close. What are some of the issues that we need to look at? But before we're joined by Jason, hi Jason, we're just going to look at a short video.
Bank cards have become a part of our everyday lives. It can be easy to lose sight of the risks associated with ETM or ATMs, given how convenient they are. Since your cards are directly connected to your accounts, it's important to stay alert and be mindful of ETM or ATM safety. Protect your ETM or ATM card. Keep it in a safe place, just like you would cash, credit cards, or checks. Immediately notify your bank if it is lost or stolen. Keep your personal identification number or PIN a secret. Never share your PIN with anyone or write it down anywhere, especially on your card. Be aware of your surroundings, particularly at night. If you sense suspicious persons or circumstances, do not use the machine at that time. Don't let people look over your shoulder. Use your hand or your whole body to prevent others from watching you enter your PIN number. Location matters. When possible, choose high-traffic machines that are inside buildings rather than one located on the street. Use this quick scan checklist to properly inspect the machine before using it. S. Scan the area for hidden cameras that record you typing your PIN. These may be mounted near the keypad, so always cover your hand while you type in a PIN. C. Compare the card reader and keypad to the rest of the machine. The colors and styles should all match, and graphics should be aligned and unobscured. A. Assess for obvious signs of tampering. The panels may be broken, dented, or a security seal may be broken. N. Nudge the card reader and keypad. Card skimmers and fake keypads are meant to be removed, so they feel loose. You may have spotted a skimmer. To keep your account information confidential and reduce the risk of being targeted, always take your receipts or transaction records with you. Remember to monitor your accounts regularly. If you suspect that your ETM or ATM card may have been compromised, immediately contact our Client Care Center at 876-998-JMMB or 5662 to report the issue. For more ETM or ATM safety tips, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at JMMB Group, or visit our website, www.jmmb.com.
Thank you for that video, JMMB. Jason, how are you doing? Thank you for being on our show today.
Good afternoon, Rochelle. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So happy you could join us and that you could provide this week for our memo some very useful tips. Now, one of the things I noted that you said is that it's important for us to understand why crime occurs. Why is that important?
Absolutely. It is important because for you to address any situation effectively, you have to understand it, and you have to understand why it is what it is before you attempt to address it. So in that regard, it is very important to understand why crime occurs in order to address it effectively.
Okay. So why crime occurs is not just because people thief. There's more to it than that.
Yes, there's a lot more to crime than just stealing. Crime is a very wide phenomenon, and it affects us globally. Countries spend trillions of dollars trying to address this issue. So it's just more than stealing. It's a very wide phenomenon.
So at this time, David, when Jason, sorry, you hear me calling you David. Jason, we're worried
Yes.
about catching COVID. We're trying to remember to wear our masks, wash our hands, keep ourselves sanitized. We were hoping that the criminals would have probably taken a break during COVID. Do we still need to be worrying about crime during COVID, and what are the particular areas that we need to be thinking about?
Absolutely, especially now that we are, so caught up in dealing with COVID. There may be gaps. We may become vulnerable because most of our time is pretty much spent on dealing with this important issue. So in that regard, we may tend to forget, these things that we normally do, and that is why it is important that we always keep in the back of our minds that security is very, very important.
Okay. So David, Jason, there must be a David calling my name where I keep calling you David. Jason, as I'm thinking about small businesses now, so say I am a small business operator and I have had a physical brick and mortar location, and with the slowing down of the economy, I have had to close my physical building. So I don't have any revenue coming in, and I may have taken a decision to not proceed with my security costs and cut out security as one of my costs. Was that a good idea to do, cut out security? And what are the preventative things that I need to have in place now that my business doors are closed?
I always tell people that security is paramount. It is paramount. It's that state of mind that one feels, safe. One feels free from any threat or any danger. And especially living in a society that we are, we have to always be mindful that there are elements of threat, whether internally or externally. So cutting that out, I can understand. In these times, you really have to prioritize. However, just be mindful that security is always important.
Okay. So if, for example, the area that I'm in, many of the businesses, I'm in a plaza, and a lot of the businesses in there are currently closed or working with shorter operating hours. So there's a lot of emptiness in there. Is there anything that as a group we could do in that plaza to help to secure ourselves?
Well, first of all, the physical structure of your business is always your first line of defense. And this is where physical security systems are important. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it denies access to unauthorized persons. You know, it denies access to your facility, your equipment, your resources. It also protects your personnel. One of the things I always say is that you have to reinforce, you have to, what the security technocrats would say, harden that target. And some of the things that you can do in that regard is to, put up shutters, reinforce shutters that are not easily breached. You can do it. There are some inexpensive options out there that
Mm-hmm.
works as well. You provide metal bars, grills. You do your security alarm and stuff like that. So there are ways that you can mitigate against being a victim, especially now that I understand that businesses are closing.
So, what are some of the key things that I need to be thinking about as an SME to prevent break-ins?
So some of the things that you would want to be thinking about is more than likely depends on what business that you are operating. But for the most part, let's say that you are running a business with inventory. That is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Your files, again, inventory, there are varying aspects to inventory, whether it be pharmaceutical, whether it be other merchandise, whether it be electronics, just your stock, right? You have to think about that because really that is your business.
Yes.
So you have to think about that. And some of the things, like I mentioned earlier, your physical structure has to be safe because it's always your first line of defense. So you have to make that tough, not
Mm-hmm.
easily breached. So there are many ways you can think of, you know, proper lighting, CCTV, burglar bars, regular security patrols, alarm system that notifies you in case there's an intrusion. There are many options in order to, enforce your physical infrastructure.
Okay. So in terms of the consideration, so I know some of our SMEs are like, Jason, I hear you, but I am really at this time just trying to keep my head above water. Can you give us some of the less expensive things that just some simple things that we can do at this time to secure our premises? Because you may not be able to invest in a CCTV now. Are there some cheaper options with that? Because we don't want to not secure our place, but we're struggling.
Absolutely, and I agree. There's a saying, the security is not cheap, and it is very true. It can be expensive, especially when you want to protect yourself and your premises in the so-called the right way. However, liaising with your local police is a good way to understand crime trends and what's going on in your local area.
Yes.
Your security providers, I'm sure they are able to, give you advice on how to best, protect your premises in like you said, an inexpensive way. I always say that designing is a very important factor as well.
Yes.
How you design your space. So in designing it, you should not let it be an easy access for criminals. I'm not sure if you have visited any of these Chinese establishments, but once you go there, you realize that it's not easy, or there's no direct access to anyone. So
Ah,
stuff like that, you can do in order to, keep unauthorized persons from accessing your
accessing.
facilities. Yes.
Okay. So, Jason, thank you because you have provided us some very useful tidbits in just some general measures that we can take in terms of security where our employees are concerned. Can you give us any pointers? Should we be doing any kind of background checks? What about IDs? Do these things become even more important at this time?
Absolutely. Very, very important, because there's a saying that says when it comes to security, people are the problem. And I find that to be very true.
Yes.
Um, Sometimes, information from within gets out. And
Mhm.
likewise, sometimes people who you don't necessarily want end up in your business, and that can be very dangerous. So I
Uh,
always advise that you do a background check on your employees, and if needs be, do it as often as you can, because people's circumstances change from time to time, and you want to know that you have honest people working inside, because most of what a criminal knows comes from within, and sometimes that is what they use to plan their attack.
Okay. And Jason, this is very useful for us because in our next conversation, we're actually talking about some cybersecurity issues and some considerations with persons working from home, some tips for our employees working from home. So we're glad you could join us this afternoon, and we're
Thank
grateful
you.
for some useful tips that you have provided. So thank you again. So this is Jason Robinson, security and investigation professional. And Jason has provided us some very useful tips on protecting our businesses, preventing break-ins, and preventing robberies. If you do not have our memo, please email us at sme@psoj.org, because we are going to be sharing with you every week all the tidbits of information with even more clarity coming out from our discussions. So we're going to be joined right now by a gentleman, Stuart Hilton, who is manager advisory services at Simtai Consulting Limited. And Stuart is going to be talking to us a little bit about cyber security. And I know many of us are wondering, what is this cyber security that Stuart is going to talk to us about? Stuart, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing today, Rochelle?
I'm great, thank you. So, Stuart, what is this cybersecurity? Before we even get into this whole, all the different protective mechanisms we need to have in place, what
Mhm.
is cybersecurity really?
Okay, cybersecurity traditionally is known as any type of information security within the internet space. I mean, that's a simple way to think about it. But
Okay,
it's interchangeably used with things like IT security, information security. But once you're in the digital realm online, you're talking about cybersecurity. Trying to
okay,
protect yourself from trying to protect yourself, your information, data, etc., from persons who are trying to harvest it or do some malicious activity.
okay. So, for our viewers, we're joined by Stuart Hilton, who is Manager Advisory Services, Simtai Consulting Limited. We're also encouraging you to take part in our online poll because we're going to be giving the results throughout the show. So, one of the things that we hear a lot about, things like phishing and malware, and for those of us the uninitiated,
Mhm.
what is phishing? Because the phishing I know is that you go out to sea and you catch fish and you carry it in. What
Right.
is this phishing in terms of cybersecurity, and what are the things that we need to be looking out for?
No problem. So phishing a little bit different from the traditional FISHING. This one is PH. Is very similar in terms of the tactic. The idea is that somebody is trying to get more information from you or reel you in to try to do something that would cause you harm. So just like fishing, you cast a line, hope something bites, and take some more from it. So phishing generally happens in emails, where an attacker sends you an email. It will include things like a link. It could be in the form of an image or just a raw link within the email. They ask you to click, usually comes with a sense of urgency, and they try to then encourage you to give more information about yourself or others. Malware. Oh, sorry, you want me to speak on malware now?
No, actually, just before we move from phishing, phishing is, for example, sometimes you will get an email from your bank, and it will say, "Dear Rochelle, please go in and change your password immediately. And this must be done within the next 2 hours, or else you will lose all of your money." Now, when you see that kind of thing, worse in this COVID time where you cannot afford to lose 1 cent of your money. When you see these kinds of things, when we are getting these emails from our financial institutions, credit card companies, what are we supposed to be looking at to know for sure that these are legitimate sources?
Right. Well, the important thing to note, as you're saying, is you're not getting it from your financial institution or your credit card. So they are trying to pretend to be your financial institution, and they have multiple techniques to try to pretend and appear just like your financial institution. So they'll copy the same HTML email, have all the imagery. Now, what you of course have to do is always check the sender. So look in the from part of the email. Sometimes the name will appear just like the sender, so it will have your bank's name at the top. And when you hover your mouse over it, you'll see an extension come up to show the actual email address. Now, it's very important to inspect that to determine whether it seems like a legitimate email address for your financial institution. And that could be as simple as them changing an O in the name to a 0. And that alone would be enough to make you recognize that this is not a legitimate sender. Even if you get to...
One of the things, Stuart, I noticed that many of our financial institutions, they will also send mails to us, just notifying us that if they are writing to us, their usual methodology is put X, Y, Z to warn. And sometimes we get these emails and we're thinking blah, blah, blah. But these are things that we do need to pay attention to.
Right. So they do send a lot of, so for example, I got an email from my financial institution just the other day. I'm giving tips about checking for phishing emails and warning things like, we will not ask you to change your password through email. So, pay attention to those things. It's, of course, still check sender to make sure that information you're getting from the financial or the apparent financial institution is legitimate. And one thing to always do is if it has a sense of emergency, check the information on the back of your, for example, your card, or Google the financial institution name, and call the customer service number provided there. Do not call customer care that's provided in the email, because that could take you to a different type of attack.
And malware, sometimes when you turn on your computer, you will get a message to say, check malware update, virus update. Sometimes when we're moving really fast and we need to get an email out urgently, when we see that, we kind of click and say later. Tell us a little bit about malware and the importance of that virus detection.
Right. So malware can come in many forms. Typically, Jamaican persons refer to malware as virus. Anything that's infecting your one of your electronic devices, persons just call it a virus. However, a virus is just one type of malware. So malware can come in many forms and have many different objectives. Some malware will just try to bombard your computer and make it unavailable. So you'll see tons of pop-ups come up on your computer screen, preventing you from being able to do anything. Other type of malware may sit quietly on your computer, just sending data to the person who installed that malware on your device. And then you have things like spyware, where persons literally use it just to keep track of your activity, being able to see what's on your computer screen, observe you log into your financial institution's website. So malware comes on many forms. And when that little pop-up comes from your antivirus on your device, don't ignore it. It probably means that something needs to be checked.
So that's a little note to self for me. Now, one of the things I have wondered about, we have been using social media so much more. So we're using social media on our PCs, we're using it on our phones, the tablets. Are there any potential attacks through social media? Because I know sometimes people's pages are hacked. So for our businesses who have their customer pages, what kind of advice would you give them to in regard to protecting their pages?
One of the most important things is to make sure not to use weak passwords. So always ensure that you're using strong passwords, and you'll get a plethora of suggestions for what a strong password is. But I would say don't make it any less than 8 characters. Some more advice comes out today saying 12 characters. I've seen 6 characters, but no less than 8. And always ensure that you use a mixture of upper and lowercase letters, special characters, and numbers, and do not use it in a way that is easily guessed. One of the ways that you can create a strong password in a way that you can remember is try to use like a phrase and then change some of the letters and some of the letters to numbers or special characters. Don't make some of them very evident. So don't necessarily change every A to an @ sign. You may change an A to an ampersand instead. So, mix it up, use a phrase that you can remember, and try to remember where you're going to put in those special characters and numbers.
Okay. So Stuart, one of the things too, as we are putting in passwords, because they say some of us, some people will put in your name or you put in your birthday. They're usual things that people put in for their passwords. But then people say, but Stuart, me can't remember them the long the password with all kind of ampersand and those things. Should I then, when I get a pop-up that says, remember my password, should I press remember my password?
My advice is not to use the remember password in the internet browser. So that's being collected by your browser. That could be Internet Explorer, Firefox, Google Chrome. Just because there are persons who are constantly trying to break into those password managers that the web browsers are storing, and if they ever broke into it one day, then they could come across a huge amount of passwords and sensitive data that everybody has been storing there. So use some of the still well established, but not as evident password managers. Those could be those come in. Of course you can Google and try to do your own little research to determine what's some of the best password manager. But an example is things like OpenVault or LastPass. Various tools out there that you can try to, and even you can get these for your phone as well. So go into your Play Store or App Store and search for password manager, and you get some options.
Okay, so these are things I really should be paying attention to. We are getting some good questions from our viewers. Jillian Jackson is asking, what's the best security software for your computer, your phone, and tablet? Okay.
And it varies dependent on the type of device you're using, just because Mac is a little bit different than your Lenovo's traditional computers. So those kind of things change, but you can go for some of the trusted brands. McAfee, Symantec. Those are some of the trusted names in protection for devices today.
That's McAfee and Syntac.
Symantec.
Symantec. You can know I wasn't using it.
Symantec. So those are some of the popular names. Big brands like Oracle provide solutions as well, so you can look into some of those. But it's always important to look at what they're providing before you select one. Don't just pick one up and go with it.
Just because.
Right. Okay. And there's some more affordable ones. I can't remember some of the open source ones off the top of my head, but there are some more affordable ones available. And of course, you can, when you're doing your searches, you can look for open source antivirus, and it'll give you some more affordable options for antivirus solutions to look for on your computer, phone, tablets, etc.
So when we see these things pop up, it's not just to annoy us and to slow us down from getting to our documents. It's actually very important things for us to be looking at and also constantly updating. I see a really good question here from Shireen Dawkins. Shireen says, I got an email today asking me to call the president of an association I'm a part of. The name was the name, but the email was not his. What are the implications, if any, if I had replied to this mail?
And that depends largely on what type of information they're asking for. Because
Okay.
the president of, they could pretend to be the president of the association and say, Shireen, I need the banking details for our group bank account. Please send me all the information and login credentials immediately. And it gives you that same sense of urgency. And because it appears to be the president, somebody you know should have this information, you're saying, okay, let me just send it very quickly. Don't know what the emergency is, but it could be something even more simple that they're just trying to build a profile on you. So to say, Shireen, could you provide me with your birth date, your TRN, some other information, and enough information to build such a profile? They could, perform things like identity theft, various things like that. So it varies with the type of information that they ask for.
Okay, this is excellent information. One of the other things, so we're going to take a few more questions shortly. So please send in your questions. I'm Stuart, you're getting quite a few questions. I'm seeing your question. Ingrid will soon get to your question, because I wanted us to jump into insider threats. What are those?
Okay. Insider threats are some of the people we trust that work within our organization. And that can even be inside your home as well. So persons that you believe have your best interests at heart, and we've verified who they are and think that they're just there to do their own function. They may intentionally or unintentionally be part of the problem. Unintentionally, because sometimes when persons are not educated about some of the risk of cybersecurity, they do things that cause harm to our systems. For example, click on phishing links within an email because they just don't know. They get an email that somebody who's pretending to be the president of the company they work for and saying, give me all this information now, and you're just responding quickly as an employee saying, I don't want to get the president upset with me. But again, if we're not, so they're unintentionally sharing information to somebody that they shouldn't be sharing information. While some persons may actually have the intent to send information outside the organization. And that could be things like taking some of our proprietary information, customer data, some of our, the templates and work tools that we've built in the organization and sharing with persons outside of our own. So, and because they can use it outside of the organization to make a profit or just to be malicious. Yeah. Disgruntled employees are a real thing.
So even as business owners too, as we move into more a work from home environment, we have to be thinking too that persons are not necessarily working within the security of the structure of our business, and we may have put in particular security measures in our own businesses, but people are working from home. I want to talk about some of the cybersecurity challenges with people working from home. But Ingrid Lee asked an important question before we move away from viruses. How do we know that the pop-up is not a virus?
So if you see a pop-up, it's a good question. If you see a pop-up warning that there's this new virus on your computer, please click to run the antivirus software now. Clicking it, if it is a virus, could be executing the virus, making it actually run and do damage to our computer. To check, what you can do is search for your antivirus separately on your computer. So if you see a pop-up jump up saying Norton antivirus detected this, if you know the name of your antivirus, or you just you're not so sure, when you hit the Windows button, type in antivirus and see what software comes up. If you do know the name of it, then you can type the name of the antivirus in and see which antivirus software pops up. Run an antivirus scan on it at that point. Manually run the antivirus scan. Okay. And it's always important to set a schedule for when the antivirus can run on its own without you prompting it.
Okay. So now that we're all working from home. I'm here in my home office, and I have neighbors. I'm here talking to you, Stuart, talking about your business with all that's happening with the company. I'm on a mic, so my speakers are on. I have to turn it up so I can hear exactly what's going on in our Zoom meeting. Now, these are conversations that would not normally have been available to our neighbors, and some of us may have to use facilities that are not our home to do work. Some of these cybersecurity challenges, can you talk to us about some of them and some of the mechanisms to mitigate from the issues?
Right. So, traditionally you would worry about, am I going to stop in a restaurant or, a coffee shop or something, and someone overhears my conversation on the phone that I'm having privately. We're already aware of those. But it's the same thing that happens at home. As you said, your neighbors might hear your conversation when you're on a web meeting. And that could include when we're discussing sensitive information. So it's always important to try to find a quiet space in order to have these conversations. And where possible, use a set of earphones. So like I have in earphones now. So for example, whatever information you're sharing with me, no one else can hear it. And I try to ensure that I'm not speaking at a volume that other persons not involved in our conversation can hear. And pay attention to your surroundings, in terms of if you are in a space where somebody can pass by without you being aware and listening to your conversation. Same goes with your desk. Try to keep your working space at home with the same kind of secure and clean desk policies that you would use at a workplace. Don't leave papers scattered around with sensitive information on them, because you may turn the camera and it points at the sensitive papers on your desk, and persons can now see what was written on them. Try to ensure that persons in your home who are hearing your conversation understand the importance of this being private, so that they're not trying to listen in on your conversation as well, even though they're your trusted family. But it's just better to not have this information shared.
We're discussing, yes. What about Wi-Fi connections? Because some of us, when we get the Wi-Fi at home, we just continue with the Wi-Fi password that we got. Is this something? Are we supposed to be changing our Wi-Fi passwords? What about security with the Wi-Fi? How do we handle that?
Right. So yeah, you raise a very important point there, Rochelle, is that when you get your Wi-Fi box, it comes with default settings and credentials. When I say credentials, I mean your login information. So if you notice, whenever somebody comes over the house and say, "Can I get the Wi-Fi password?" a lot of persons default go for, "All right, let me go by the box," and they're reading the password off of the box. That box, as you can see, has the password in clear daylight. Anybody can go by, pick it up. And if even the guys who were installing it for some reason decided to pick up the password off of the device, then they now have that default password. And many other ways that passwords can be obtained. So it's very important to change that password when you first get the router into your home. And that can be done by following the instructions which are generally on the Wi-Fi box. So it'll tell you how to log in, tell you what the default password to log in is, and then you can change the password there. And it's also important to change those default passwords to log into your router. So there's essentially a two-step process. There's one where you can log into the physical device, which is the router, in order to manage your Wi-Fi settings. And then there's two, the password that you're using to add your phone or your computer to the Wi-Fi. So it's important to change those two. Because I can tell you what the default password is right now. I know for all of all the routers that get supplied in residential homes, because it's one set of credentials given to everybody. And it's important to change those, because anybody else who's installed a router from one of your internet service providers, you probably have the same password that your neighbor has to get into your Wi-Fi box. The only password that's different is to actually add your phone or laptop to the Wi-Fi.
That's some very important information for us to have. So viewers, we have been joined by Stuart Hilton. Very, very engaging conversation. I will have to certainly be looking at some of my own cybersecurity matters. Stuart is Advisory Services Manager at Simtai Consulting Limited. And Stuart has talked to us today about some of the important matters that we need to be taking into consideration when our employees are working at home. Ensure you have a secure home Wi-Fi. Lock your computer screen when not in use. Do not use unsecure Wi-Fi connections. Be discreet when conducting web meetings, phone calls. Periodically perform virus scans and periodically check for system updates, especially as regards viruses. So Stuart, thank you very much. Stuart is going to go backstage for a moment while we speak with Dane. So Stuart is going to come back. So if you have any questions for Stuart, Please, we're looking forward to your questions. But we've also had a poll running. And one of our poll questions was, has your business ever been the victim of a crime? 20% answered yes and 80% answered no. That is very good for our crime figures. Does your business have a cybersecurity policy? 22% of our respondents said yes and 78% said no. Hopefully, having heard from Stuart the various issues that can happen because you are not properly secured with a cybersecurity policy and with mechanisms to ensure that your information is protected, hopefully that this has helped you to move forward. So before we're joined by Dane, just tune in right now for a video.
What I'm about to explain is the handheld skimmer that fraudsters will normally use to capture customer card information. It is popular at nightclubs, restaurants, and gas stations. All it takes is a quick swipe of the customer debit or credit card through the skimmer and the information is gone. What I'm about to also explain is a new and worrying trend that we have noticed over the past few weeks, where fraudsters are retrofitting the point of sale terminal and turning them into skimmer. What they'll do is give them to either a pump attendant or a cashier to swipe the customer debit or credit card through, give you the terminal to input your PIN. However, the transaction won't be successful. What you'll get is an error message which says communication error. And then the pump attendant or the cashier will give you the regular terminal that the transaction will be successful on. Now, so what we are advising customers to do is, once they realize something of that sort, they call our customer care center.
Wow. So we've talked about physical security, we've talked about cyber security. Now we are talking about the very important issue of protecting these cards. So Dane, thank you for joining us. Dane is the manager of NCB's Fraud Prevention Unit. Dane, you're gonna make my heart start beat fast when I say all of the different things that can happen with card fraud, because most of us aren't really walking with cash anymore. So we have a purse or a wallet full of cards, all types of cards. Can you tell us a little bit more about how fraud card fraud can happen? You see me all I get nervous. How does it happen? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Good afternoon, Rochelle. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers as well. All right, so there's a variety of ways with which card fraud can happen. It can take place at your brick and mortar location, and it can take place also on their e-commerce space. So popularly, especially in Jamaica, we are popular with a video went viral the other day referred to a little black device, a grabber, which is known as the handheld skimmer. But fraudsters have seemed to evolve from that and move to the point of sale now, where they are retrofitting the genuine point of sale that banks issue. They are stealing them and retrofitting them and turning them into skimmers. So how that fraud works now, Rochelle, is that you'll go to a place of business, you'll tender your card, the pump attendant or the cashier will take your card, swipe it, give the machine to you to enter your PIN. Then they'll tell you, oh, this machine is not working, I'll have to use another one to conduct the transaction. Then the second machine now is the good machine from the place of business. So customers and businesses are to be aware of that, and just persons must be aware of the double swiping of their cards to check with business owners to ensure that both of those machines actually belong to the place of business. So COVID-19 has changed the world. The world is not changing anymore. The world has changed. So e-commerce is now the way to go. So fraudsters will see to take advantage of that as well. So we are seeing where fraudsters are now utilizing what referred to as JavaScript skimmers. This type of skimming take place in the checkout cart. So those who are familiar with the e-commerce sites, so like for example, Amazon, you will stuff to your cart, and then when you go to checkout, you put your card details, your CVV, and your expiry date. Fraudsters are writing malicious programs to infect the checkout cart of e-commerce sites. So develop small businesses and businesses at large must ensure that these e-commerce sites are properly developed and the proper security protocols are put in place to protect both themselves and their customers at large.
Okay, that's because with many of us doing so many transactions online, I think as you even mentioned with the card machines, because sometimes we're in the checkout line, we may be on our phone, we may be WhatsApping, and sometimes we're not paying attention to what is going on. And I see a question here before we move on, Dane. I see a question here from Christopher Durrell. Hi, Christopher. He says, Dane, don't those point of sale machines have proprietary software on them? How are the scammers? Imagine how the scammers them getting access to development resources for these devices.
No, they actually, so I can't speak for us here at NCB. So for us, if one of our machine has been stolen, once that device is tampered with, then all our proprietary software is immediately deactivated. But once you're in cyberspace and computer related activities, fraudsters are able to mirror genuine card capturing activities that would take place on the point of sale. So for example, on our point of sale, we don't store information. Information is transmitted through our point of sale, but the ones that the fraudsters have, its sole purpose is to capture the information. So it captures the customer's card and it captures the customer's PIN as well. So that is the difference between the genuine one and the fake one. The genuine one only transmits information.
Okay, so for our viewers, one of the things too, I think all of our financial institutions now have systems in place too that when your card, whether your debit or credit card is run, you get an email or a text message with that information. And I think when we even look at protecting our cards against fraud, because the reality in the world that we're living in now, we're not going to get away from using the card at some point. And how can I actually now be protecting myself against card fraud?
All right, so one of the things that businesses and customers on a whole should ensure that banks have their most up-to-date contact information. That includes both your email address and the relevant contact numbers, so that you can get the transaction alerts. Financial institutions such as ours at NCB have created website. Ours is www.chargeback.jncb.com. That website allows you to temporarily place a restriction on your card. So whether or not your card has been compromised or you just can't find it for a minute or two, and when you go to bed at night, you can just put a soft restriction just to ensure that no transaction is taking place on your card as well. But Rochelle, a new and worrying trend that I want to mention also for your viewers to be aware of is one that we refer to as SIM swap fraud. We have seen an escalation of this since COVID-19. This one happens when you have your cell phone in your possession and your chip goes blank. It's not working. You can't make any call and you can't receive any call either. So fraudsters will do this for two purposes. One, either they'll do it to take over your email address, because a lot of persons use their cell number as their recovery password. So you'll click forget password on your email, and then you'll get a text message with a code to give you access to your email. And then that same email address is what you'll provide to the bank for the bank to set up your internet banking facility. So you see why the fraudsters need to gain access to the SIM and then to the email as well. Yes. Fraudsters are also doing the SIM swap as well for fraudulent activation of persons' credit card, because a lot of banks, including NCB as well, is mailing out the credit cards to fraudsters, to customers. Fraudsters are stealing those cards in the mail and then obtaining the information through various means and then fraudulently activating the cards. They'll go to the telecom provider, whether Flow or Digital, and say, oh, my SIM card has been lost. So they impersonated you, for example, Russia. And then they say your SIM card has been lost. Then they do a SIM swap, change out the SIM card, and then your phone goes down, and then they use the SIM card that they obtained to activate your credit card, and all your funds are gone. So persons, when your cell phone goes down, no, don't just take it as if Digicel or Flow has a problem. There could be financial implications as well for that happening.
Okay. Jillian actually says she's just going to shut off all of her devices and move into a cave. Jillian, I feel that little way a while ago, but since we're not going to be able to do that, what even that whole concept of the recovery number, recovery mail, what are some of the precautions that we need? Because, sometimes we're doing these things and we're just moving quickly and we're not thinking about the implications. What are some of the things that we need to do where our passwords are concerned, recovery numbers, recovery mails that you would suggest to us?
So don't use passwords don't write down the password. That's rule number one. Do not write down the password. Create password that you are able to remember, and do not create a weak password. Ensure that there is capital, common, and other characters that are included in the.
How are we going to do that for my pin? Because my pin is 4 number.
Well, your pin, as it relates to your pin, just ensure that you protect your pin whilst conducting either at the ATM or at the point of sale. Use your free hand to cover your pin so that no shoulder surfing can take place. Anybody can just look over your shoulder and get your pin. So just protect your pin with your free hand as well.
Okay.
And protect it also in the ABM from spyware cameras. So if you aren't able to identify the skimmers that will be attached to the older ATM now that are in the fields that are vulnerable, ensure that you cover your pin. So if the unfortunate thing might arise where your fraudsters have a malicious device attached to the ABM, if you cover your pin and they get your card number but they don't get your pin, then they can't proceed to do transactions because they don't have the pin. So it's very important to protect the pin at all times.
Yeah, because sometimes some people, those of you who you have your card in a little pouch that you get from the bank, and when you put in the pin, you just write it down quick because you never remember the numbers. We actually do have to try and remember these pin numbers, because if persons get access to them, it could be very, 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 very disheartening. So one of the things that you have also mentioned to us in our discussions is to monitor your card transaction activity on bank statements, because I know sometimes we're not paying keen attention to our bank statements. Now we can go online and check minutely. What are some of the things that we need to be looking out for and to protect ourselves from any suspicious activity?
So as I had mentioned before, ensure that coupled with monitoring the statement activity, ensure that the bank has your up-to-date information so you can get the alerts. If you do not receive the alert, just check your statement for any suspicious transactions that are out of band, those that you will not don't conduct. Just ensure that you thoroughly peruse your statement to ensure that no unauthorized transactions are there. And if you do see, raise it with your bank immediately so that the appropriate actions can be taken to mitigate any risk exposure.
All right. Gillian, thank you. Gillian has a question here because Gillian has decided she's not going to go into the cave. So she wants to know, how can you protect against SIM swap, and how do they access the phone?
All right. So they don't access your phone. That's the first thing. What they'll do is identity theft. They will steal your identity and go into your telecommunication provider and pretend to be you and tell the telecom provider that your SIM was lost or stolen, and then they do a SIM swap. That's how it works. So they'll get your information. Information is available via various means. So either they'll obtain your TRN from either a data breach, or they will have their cronies well placed in various institutions around the world that can provide them with your demographic information, and then they will go in to do the SIM swap. But if the red flags to note is that if your phone can't make any call and you do a restart and it's still not you're still not able to make a call, then raise it quickly. Well, raise it with your bank first to put up a restriction, temporary restriction on your accounts and your credit cards, and then you take it up with your telecommunication provider to see whether or not they are having any technical issues or it is a SIM swap. All
right. So then you've really given us a lot to consider. And I'm seeing here, Vivia is saying, thank you for bringing on Mr. Nicholson. He demonstrates excellent knowledge of his industry. So we really want to thank you for coming onto our program. Delia McDonald, I'm seeing you. It looks like we should have our money in several different accounts and minimize our credit card limit and keep only a small amount in bank accounts linked to cards. Very interesting way of looking at it.
I would advise a little different, because in any way that we do it, all we have to do is to put, if you drive on the road, the possibility of an accident is very likely. If you fly in an airplane, the accident, it's still likely. So if you have a credit card also, all we have to do is to
Pay attention.
implement best practices and take the necessary advice from your financial institution, give them the up-to-date contact information so you can get the transaction alert, sign up for mobile apps and stuff like that so you can monitor your activities on your account quickly, because the world has changed. We're not going back to a cash system. We're going cashless now. So e-commerce and cards are the way to go.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Dane. And for those of you who may be wondering, because I know that you sometimes when we get these notes on malware and phishing, they look boring. And sometimes even when your organization sends you these notifications and this reading, you say that way happened to me. Now, we actually, in this week's memo, so please email us at sme@psoj.org. We actually provide a list of references for things like the best ways to prevent credit card fraud and theft, cybersecurity policies for small businesses, how to back up files on your computer. So we have some very useful things that you can implement, and we have the references in this week's memo. So please email us, sme@psoj.org. We're going to invite Jason and Stuart Hilton back on, so please keep those questions coming. I'm seeing a question here coming in from Andre Palmer. Andre says, are there plans to move to the chip and pin for cards? This seems to be much safer. So Dane, I'm going to direct that question to you.
So for 10CB, all our credit cards are chip and pin. Our Midas debit card, we are in the process of testing those, and we'll be rolling out that to the market very soon. So the chip and pin is definitely a lot more secure. We haven't seen any evidence where fraudsters are able to duplicate the chip. So we encourage persons to use the chip rather than the mag stripe of the card, because the mag stripe is very easily skimmed and then a duplicate card can be made.
Okay, so chip and pin is actually the way to go. So when the bank changes out your card to the chip and pin, they're not trying to cause you any stress. This is actually to help you. Stuart, I'm going to pull you in here because, you know, we're always thinking of these conspiracy theories, and somebody, I'm seeing Stephanie here, is wondering, can employers track what I'm doing at home on the company computer? And how can I check if they're tracking me? So before you answer that, Stuart, just to point out to our viewers, if your company has issued you a company-issued laptop and you're using their system, remember that this is now the company's system, so that's not your private system. So notwithstanding, can companies actually track what is going on at home, Stuart?
Yes, they can, and you pointed out particularly why. So employees, depending on what is installed on the device, they can actually see the activity of what's happening on the computer. And I mean, there's other ways that persons can, intercept, not just the employer, but, attackers as well, intercept some of your activity on your computer. So as you said, it's very important to note, do not use your computer as your personal device. You may be doing some personal activities, but if it's anything private, do not do it. If it's anything against company policy, do not do it.
So
But
that needless to say, from home, those things still apply.
Right. But
Okay.
if check with your company and find out what are some of the things that they may be doing to keep track of what is their physical asset, which is a computer.
Yeah.
And that could include tracking software to try to identify where the computer is at any given time.
In terms of, let me just pull in Jason at this time. Jason, I'm seeing a question here about car theft and where you may have, say, a company-owned vehicle. So you are working from home, the car is parked at home. Should we be taking any precautions, with any additional precautions now that we are at home? I hear people say that robbers, in especially complexes, robbers used to rob during the day because everybody's gone out during the day, so the complexes are empty until after work. But now people are there for the entire day. Are there any additional home security measures that we need to be putting in place?
That's a very good question, Rochelle. Car theft is a very big problem in Jamaica. Between 2014 and 2017, we had like over 3,000 cars stolen in Jamaica. And that's a very serious issue. Now, my recommendation with regards to preventing car theft is always use a combination of anti-theft devices. So you have so many out there. You have the alarm, you have your tracking system, you have your wheel lock, you have your steering wheel lock, you have the electronic immobilizer. My advice is use a combination of at least three.
Okay. So, in fact, as we are moving along here, I am seeing a question from Jillian. And Jillian asks, what advice do you have for 80% of the businesses with no cybersecurity policies? Jillian, in fact, in our reference document this week, we have two references for cybersecurity policies for small businesses. One of them is at https resources.workable.com at cybersecurity policy. But if you, of course, if you sign up with us, you can get the memo. The link will be in our article for this week. And a lot of the cybersecurity policies, in fact, the ones that we have provided with the templates, you can easily just put in your company information. They have the basic information, but also just additional tweaks that can give you a cybersecurity policy. So now we don't have that as an excuse anymore. So the same internet that we can have the phishing and the malware, there is so much benefit and importance in us using some of these resources. Andre says, Stuart, how often should companies do an independent security assessment, and what should that entail?
Okay. And if you give me 1 second, Rochelle, just to address the idea about the policies.
Okay.
It's, you know, while it's very good to be able to get some of these resources to be able to get the policies, it's very important to remember having it on a piece of paper does not protect you. Always ensure that you are trying to enforce these policies by implementing them correctly.
Excellent point.
Right. You know, so you don't think that we've gotten the paper now, we have our name, we're good. Stamp approval. Try to get them implemented. All right. In terms of security assessment, it may vary dependent on your risk appetite, the company's risk appetite, and the type of threats that occur. So I would say at least do a vulnerability assessment, which is at least a scanning of your network, at least annually. And for persons who have more, bigger threats to their system, do that vulnerability assessment more often, could be quarterly. And if you have the resources to, you can be doing it on a monthly basis in-house or get a third party to do it. Some bigger assessments where it's coming and doing a full information security assessment of your company, which is looking at all your procedures, trying to determine whether you're trying to enact all the policies within your policy framework, and also if your policies are up to date and good and are meeting industry best practices. Yes. That I would say, try to do that once a year if possible. Of course, it can be expensive to do it from a third party, but don't have an organization that has not tried to get at least an idea of what they look like from a security posture.
Okay, so Stuart, you provide advisory services, and I see where our viewers have lots of questions. I know our resource panel will be answering some of the questions, but we will also make their contact details available because Stuart, I see several people. People are asking so many questions about these cards. Then, in terms of the cards, as we are wrapping up, because some people are saying, should I park my cards? I don't think we can park our cards. I think we still are going to just have to ensure that we are putting the relevant security measures for ourselves with the use of our cards. But can you proffer any kind of opinion for us on, is it better to be using debit cards or credit cards, or it doesn't really matter?
Well, from an industry's perspective, I don't necessarily push one product over the other, because both are, if the risk exists, both will be vulnerable. But there's a saying that a lot of persons love to say, that they'll use the credit card because it is the bank's money. that they are using. So if persons is comfortable using the credit card, I don't have a problem with that. And if you're comfortable using the debit card, the preference is there. But the important thing to note is that if the unfortunate thing do arise where your credit card is compromised, I'm sure us at NCB, once we can establish that fraud has taken place, we will reimburse persons. But one of the myths I want to clear up, Rochelle, about using credit cards and the use of ID as well. A lot of the small businesses is requiring customers to use their IDs when presenting their credit card. That is only enabling fraudsters and irritating your good, genuine customers. Because if the card is fake, the ID is fake. And a part of the card acceptance procedure, there's no ID. You do not require an ID to show to anybody at all. What places a customer at a place of business is either the PIN or the signature that the customer will sign on the sales slip. So persons are asking for ID when I don't know where it came from in Jamaica, where everywhere you go, persons ask you to present an ID with your credit card. You're only enabling the fraudsters, because when the fraudsters come with the counterfeit cards, you don't have to ask them for the ID. They present both the card and the ID to you. So it's a smooth sailing. And then the opportunity to detect the counterfeit card by looking for the security features on the card is missed, because we are focusing on the ID.
On the ID. Oh, and annoying, Rochelle. So,
Yes.
Shireen Dawkins, Shireen asked Stuart, how do you decide on a third-party assessment, who to go to for a third-party assessment? Is SimTi one of the organizations that do that third-party, that vulnerability test that Andre asked about?
Well, I'm glad you said it for us, Rochelle. I mean, if the direct answer to Shireen's question is just contact SimTi.
Okay.
But there are companies like SimTi, but I would definitely say contact us if you want to do a vulnerability assessment, full security assessment. We offer a plethora of services in the information security realm, along with business assurance. So and other advisory services. So contact us, check out our website, and see, and you can see some of the services we offer. But yes, we do offer those services.
Okay. And as we are wrapping up, we have a comment here from Shelley-Ann Elliott. Shelley-Ann said, just recently I went to a supermarket, and after swiping my debit card, the cashier placed the machine on the counter. I took the opportunity to remind her of some of the risks. Say that the frontline staff need to be more vigilant toward customers' card safety. But I think a bigger point to that, Shelley-Ann, is that you also exercised vigilance. And I think one of the key points Dane was saying is that we have to be vigilant. So it's good of you that you exercise that vigilance and pointed out the risk. We need to be paying attention to the transaction activity on our cards. We need to be ensuring that we're not making our PINs easily accessible. We also talked with Jason, and Jason talked about the physical security of our premises. Jason, thank you for your input. That notwithstanding COVID, crime is still alive, and we need to ensure that we are protecting our property. Stuart talked to us about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, 5 years from now, from 5 years ago, that wasn't something we were talking about a lot, but this is now the reality of our life, and much of what we are doing is happening online. So we are really, really pleased to have had these three gentlemen on our episode 8, talking to us about crime prevention strategies during COVID. The gentlemen, thank you again. And please, viewers, send in your questions. Our panel, I know, will still make themselves available to answer some of these questions. And so thank you very much, gentlemen, and please stay safe. In the meantime, we're also going to be talking, viewers, about better safe than sorry, going through some of the key points that came out today. But we also want to point you to another poll that we had. What crime are you most concerned about? And our viewers said for property theft, I see 0%. For payment card fraud, 63%. For vehicle theft, 5%. And cybercrime, 32%. What a thing that payment card fraud and cybercrime, those were the crimes that we were most concerned about. And I think too, because those touch and concern with money. So better safe than sorry. Today we went through several issues, and some of the things that we want you to remember. Identify vulnerable areas in the physical structure of your business, rectify and reinforce exposed areas. Be hyper alert in the following 3 situations: entering and leaving premises, getting into and out of cars. Do not park in isolated areas for long. ATM vestibules. Examine ATM machines and vestibules for tampering or recording devices. Cover your hand when submitting your PIN. Back up data on phone and laptop at least once a month. So even if it's stolen, all is not lost. Install location tracking software. Ensure everyone's antivirus software, so all of your employees' antivirus software is up to date. Change your daily routes and routines. Keep copy of the ID and proof of address for anyone working with you. Credit, especially your contractors. Credit cards are usually, some persons prefer using credit cards over debit cards because there's greater insurance and protection. Never let your credit card or debit card out of your sight when it is being swiped. Never click on links in odd sounding emails or emails with too good to be true opportunities, or in emails from strange senders and addresses. And hand over items. Now, we didn't talk extensively with Jason about it, but preservation of life is the most important thing. So whether it is preservation of life from COVID or preservation of life from any kind of harm to you, from a thief, anyone that attacks you, give up the item. Your life is not worth. Your life is worth so much more than any personal property that you may have. So viewers, we are so grateful to have you on again on another episode of the COVID cast, PSOJ's COVID cast. Today we talked about security alert, protect yourself and your business from crime. All of the information that we presented today is available in our memo. Please email us at sme@psoj.org. If you haven't done it, go ahead and email us right now so that you can be on our list and get this very valuable memo. Join us again next week, and we ask that you comment, that you share our video, that you send in your questions. We do answer your questions, all your questions, even after the broadcast. And join us again next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. for another episode of COVID Cast JA.